Yeah, so I think that's going now. So you can start, yeah.
Okay, well, can I welcome you all to our first Monmouthshire County Council Cabinet meeting held virtually. This is our new county hall now for the time being. Anyway, it's good to be in connection with everybody again, and it's a really important that we do come back together and start meeting. We have an important agenda today. Firstly, can I advise everybody to keep their machines on mute? For those who will be looking in afterward, this meeting will be uploaded. I'm Peter Fox, I'm leader of the council, and today we're joined by colleague cabinet members, Councillor Bob Greenland, cabinet member, deputy leader and cabinet member for enterprise and land use planning, Councillor Paul Jordan, cabinet member for governance and law, Councillor Richard John, Children and Young People and Mon Life, Councillor Penny Jones, Cabinet Member for Social Care, Safeguarding and Health, Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Whole Authority Resources, and Councillor Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, Neighbourhood and Neighbourhood Services. We're also joined by opposition leaders, Dimitri Betruni, Francis Taylor and Councillor Joe Watkins. So welcome all. We're also joined by senior officers, and I will introduce officers at the start of each report to share who is in the meeting and who will likely to be contributing. Okay, so I can just go to, I've just lost my agenda. Fine, no worries, I will do it from here. So first of all, are there any apologies for absence? Well, I know the answer to that. No, there aren't today, so it's a full house. Are there any declarations of interest? Well, I won't, whilst I'm putting that question here now, what I'll be doing is asking you to declare those interests, if you have any, at the start of each of the individual reports, okay? So next item is an opportunity for me to say a few words, and please bear with me. This is unprecedented times, and it's important, I think, that we just spend some time and reflect a little. I mean, every day is a new step on our journey into this new normality, a situation that none of us could have ever imagined. A period that will mark history in the same way as world wars did. The devastating virus has taken near to 30,000 lives, probably crossed that today, and that number still grows. People like you all and me, people with a story, a family, who were planning for their futures, they were so cruelly taken. Our thoughts and prayers go to their families and loved ones, their friends and their communities. And at this point, I would like us to observe a short period of reflection for those who have gone and for their families. Thank you all. Thank you. No part of our great United Kingdom has been unaffected, and every community has had to adjust and sacrifice their usual freedoms for the greater good. This universal effort is working. The infection rate is dropping, but there is still a long way to go before we approach anything that really resembles life as we knew it just a couple of months ago. The effort put in by everyone has stopped the NHS becoming overwhelmed and has allowed our wonderful doctors and nurses to save many lives. It's difficult to describe our total admiration for these people who have had to go to work every day and to battle with this deadly thing. We will never be able to repay them for all they have done and continue to do, some paying that ultimate sacrifice. Our deepest thanks go to them all and all who support them. The same goes to our carers in all sectors, out every day putting the needs of those they care for above their own lives and well-being. In Monmouthshire, our workforce has been fantastic, raising to unprecedented challenges, doing an absolutely brilliant job. Our frontline people have been at the chalk face day in, day out. Our social care staff, both in children and adults, doing brilliant things. Our community meal service still delivering those meals every day to the most vulnerable. Our staff out there collecting waste, just providing such a brilliant service. Frontline workers who are just totally dedicated and just keep going. Our school-based staff and those who've been redeployed, working with them to providing care settings for our children of our key workers, and all of those teachers who are working from home, providing distance learning for our children. A big thank you to them. There are so many staff who have been working flat out. Our community support teams and the huge volunteer effort providing crucial help and support to the vulnerable in society and manning and supporting things like the food banks as well at a time where so many are struggling with everyday life. Thanks got to go to our enterprise and finance teams for pushing absolutely millions of pounds out of the door to businesses through support grants who've just pulled the stops out, been absolutely brilliant. Also to our public protection teams doing a fantastic job liaising with businesses, helping them and helping to keep us safe as well as finance teams continuing to do the great work they do. Benefits advice we've been handed out, our grounds and highways chaps and ladies out doing the things we expect of them, all pushing ahead as normal. And our planning teams, still that work goes on. Our personnel team still supporting everybody out there. And initiatives, the Family Information Service, absolutely brilliant service for people who are really vulnerable at the moment and who need somebody to support them. And I mustn't forget our digital support, which has been just brilliant. I mean, we've moved to this new environment, which is really challenging for some of these technical platforms, but we've got it and we're up and running. And a big thanks to all of them who keep it going. But to our democratic function as well and our legal function, still holding fort and keeping things running, there will be many other services areas doing many important things that I haven't touched on, and my apologies for not touching everybody. I want to also thank the Chief Exec and senior officers for their absolutely amazing service in leading, directing and coordinating. We are truly blessed in Monmouthshire, and I've said this several times, with the quality of the staff we've got right the way through the organisation. I want to thank my colleague cabinet members for their work and commitment, and to all other members for their own efforts, significant efforts within their own communities. This statement today cannot possibly capture the magnitude of the efforts that have been put in by so many. All I've mentioned are supplemented by so many others in our communities, including the wider voluntary sector, our partner public servants, those in the police, the fire service and the armed forces, and the list just goes on. A huge thank you to you all for what you have done and continue to do. Thanks also to our communities for working with us. They've been brilliant and they continue to be so. I think yesterday's figures for New cases of COVID-19 in Monmouthshire, it stood at 16, more than the previous few days put together, was a stark reminder that we are not out of the woods by a long way, and we all need to maintain our efforts to date. Today is our first virtual cabinet meeting and signals a move to us operating in a new way, and I'm pleased that we are now ready to do this. I've asked the Chief Executive to set dates for another cabinet at the end of the month, a full council for the 4th of June, and to make provision for 2 important all-member seminars in the coming weeks. I will also be looking to agree with the Chairman and the Chief Executive a date in July for the AGM. This signifies very clearly to the public that the conditions have now been reset to allow members to safely resume their full roles. So I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's pulled together for this one massive, fantastic Monmouthshire effort. There were a lot of work still to go on, but, you know, massive thanks for all you've done to date. Thanks for bearing with me through that, but it was just important. I wanted to share those few words with you. Members, I'm going to take us now, if I can find my agenda again, I'll take us back through the meeting. Okay, so item 4 then is the Estin report into local government education services in Monmouthshire County Council. And can I invite now Councillor Richard John to present the report, please?
Thank you, Leader. Firstly, I want to start by thanking Estin, the Wales Audit Office, and all our officers and school-based staff and others who engaged in this inspection. This was the first major inspection by Estin since November 2012. It was carried out between the 10th and 14th of February 2020, and the report was published on the 21st of April. It sets out strengths in our education service, including areas of best practice, but also sets out areas where we need to improve. This report is a robust and detailed assessment of school and council performance in education in Monmouthshire. It accurately reflects the strong progress the authority's made since 2012 and sets out areas for improvement. In terms of judgments, there is just one. Does the authority give cause for significant concern? Estin concluded that it does not. In summary, the report talks about the local authority having a clear vision, a strong focus on the best possible start in life for learners. It says we have high expectations, a commitment to strong partnership working. We have a good track record of improvement. And it also talks about our robust and exemplar safeguarding procedures. In fact, Estin want to return to do a case study because they believe that other local authorities in Wales can learn from the best practice that Monmouthshire has developed in terms of safeguarding. It says that standards are generally good, standards of well-being are strong, but recognises the challenge that we've discussed in our chamber on many occasions, that performance of pupils eligible for free school meals is lower than pupils across Wales. It sets out our strong commitment to improve provision and outcomes for pupils with special educational needs, but also sets out that it also states that our evaluation of special educational needs services is inconsistent, and Estin felt that holds back our ability to plan for future improvements. The authority has clear and consistent self-evaluation processes, but we don't always maximise the use of available data to better inform improvement planning. The report recognises that pupils make good progress, but noted that of the 13 schools that have been inspected by Estin in the last 3 years, none received an excellent judgment for standards. Pupils with special educational needs make good progress, and pupils in our special needs resource bases make at least good progress. Standards of well-being are strong. Participation rates in extracurricular activities, including sport, are also strong. The report concludes that we have some valuable strategies to support pupils who require emotional and mental well-being support. Attendance is strong, rates of persistent absence are lower than average, and rates of permanent exclusions have been consistently low in recent years. The report looked at how we work with our partners, and specifically the Education Achievement Service, and it recognised the clear and frank lines of communication and stated that together we effectively monitor school progress, and where we intervene in schools causing concern, that's done in both a timely and effective manner. In terms of leadership, the report recognises our work in seeking out the brightest and best school leaders, driving up standards of leadership in our schools. In terms of special educational needs, the report praises our SEN officers who have a shared passion and commitment to improve our provision. It recognises the recent reviews in our inclusion services, the result of which is that we're better placed to be able to meet the needs of these pupils. But as I mentioned, the report concludes that we don't use data well enough when reporting. The rate of short-term exclusions for pupils with special educational needs is also too high. Overall, Estin felt our approach to evaluating SEN services was inconsistent, and that's reflected in one of the recommendations, which I'll come to in a moment. Free school meals performance, as we know, does not compare favourably with similar groups of pupils in Wales. However, the report recognises that this is a priority for this authority, and that we have a clear commitment to address it, evidenced by the objectives in our corporate plan and in our improvement plans. It praises our early years team for the work they do in mitigating the impact of poverty, particularly our Flying Start officers and the work of the ACORN project. In terms of our youth service, Estin recognised that we've maintained investment in our youth services and recognised the impact that our youth workers have in empowering young people. Our youth enterprise team is particularly effective at supporting quite vulnerable young people to access education, employment or training. We offer a wide range of activities for young people, youth clubs, youth centres, holiday activities, and our Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme has the highest participation rate of any in Wales. However, Estin felt that we don't do enough to engage young people from disadvantaged backgrounds in that scheme. So that's something that we're looking at with Mon Life officers and other departments in the organisation about how we put that right. Also in terms of our youth service, Estin praised our Equality Street group, which you'll recall won the National Youth Work Excellence Award last year for promoting diversity. In terms of leadership, Estin said we set out a clear vision for education, and that's evidenced by our documents. They recognise the way in which senior leaders work effectively with partners to drive forward improvements. And we've also set out evidence of how we're prepared to take difficult decisions. Estin concluded that both senior officers and elected members across the organisation understand quite well the challenges facing our education service. We have a clear ambition and strategy for increasing Welsh medium education, and we're engaging well with stakeholders. We have clear and consistent self-evaluation processes to enable us to identify areas of improvement. In terms of school buildings, we've taken significant strides to improve our school stock. In terms of budgets, we plan our budgets carefully, showing a commitment to education, although the report recognises that our school balances are amongst the lowest in Wales. And the report also, as well as going into quite some detail about the exemplar practice we have in safeguarding, it also notes the importance we put on safeguarding as a corporate responsibility, and the report sets out that is particularly strong in the organisation. The recommendations in the report are clear and they align well to our own self-evaluation and our priorities in our corporate plan. So there are 4 recommendations for us: to improve outcomes for pupils eligible for free school meals, to articulate a clear strategy for special educational needs provision, to strengthen the use of information gathered through self-evaluation to better inform improvement planning, and further strengthen the focus on increasing the number of pupils achieving excellent standards. Work is ongoing in these areas, but we recognise the need to better articulate the impact that we expect changes to have in these areas. And further detail is being developed in conjunction with our partners in the Education Achievement Service. We're putting on a member seminar for all elected members to have an opportunity to discuss this report. That'll be in the coming weeks, and I'm sure the Children and Young People Select Committee will be very keen to deliberate the contents of this report at its next meeting. In conclusion, this report demonstrates that we put the highest priority on delivering the best possible start in life for young people. It reflects the strong progress the authority is making, but there are some really important areas of challenge which will be the focus of ongoing work for both officers and elected members in the coming weeks and months. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Richard. That was a good comprehensive run through this. Remiss of me, I forgot to introduce Councillor Sarah Jones, Cabinet Member for Social Justice and Community Development, who's also with us. Sorry about it, Sarah. Before I open it up wider, perhaps I can invite Will McLean, Chief Officer for Education, to contribute if he wishes.
Good afternoon, Leader and Cabinet, and thank you for the opportunity just to add a couple of comments to Richard's overview of the report. I think the most important thing for me to say is, first of all, to express my thanks to all my colleagues in every school, every early years setting, throughout Monmouthshire County Council, who really work together seamlessly and in a really positive way to make sure that we were ready and able to demonstrate to the inspectors when they visited us the work that we've been undertaking in Monmouthshire over the past number of years. I think the way that the Eston inspection works now is significantly different to how it has been in the past, and the depth and the breadth of information and sources of intelligence that they draw upon is far wider now. The preliminary visit of the lead and the deputy lead inspector saw them do focus groups and interviews with 60 people across the couple of days they were with us, and they gleaned a huge amount about our approach and the way we're trying to work in Monmouthshire from those stakeholders. And I think that really made sure that when they actually came to the full visit, we were really able to demonstrate the impact we were having. I think it would be entirely appropriate at this moment to recognise the contribution that partners in the Education Achievement Service have made to our improvement journey. They've been a fundamental part, and I think as Richard drew out, the frank conversations that take place between ourselves really does mean that we do set the highest challenges for our school, and our expectations are at the very highest levels for all of our learners. I think the final point I'd just like to end on really is just to echo Councillor John's comments that the recommendations that the report makes really do align very clearly to our own self-evaluation. They're the areas that we know we have work to do in. The areas around FSM have been well rehearsed over the last couple of years. I think one of the things which we really do need to do is to find a way in a changing context of how we give account for the progress that we're making, how we make it really clear to the whole political body of the authority that they can really understand the progress that's being made by those cohorts when we can't use aggregated data as we have done in the past. So that's a really key piece for us. The other part around ALN, throughout the discussions we've had in the past year around the future of Mountain House and so on, we've made reference on repeated occasions to us having that very clear vision and strategy for ALN in the future. It works in really positively for us as it aligns very clearly with the new legislation that will be enacted soon. The pursuit of excellence is a key one for the whole authority. We've been working hard with our schools. We now have some excellent judgments, but they haven't been in that standards area. So we need to completely continue to work with our schools to make sure that with the AS, we're always pushing them to the very highest standards. It's not just a few children achieving the very highest standards or children who might always have reached the highest standards. It's about every child really exceeding where you might expect them to perform. So all of that work in those three key areas will be underpinned by that ongoing development of self-evaluation. And I was really pleased to see the self-evaluation recognised by the report as being very clear and well evidenced. We know that there are some areas where we have to improve the depth and the diagnostic quality of our evaluations, and we will do that, of course. And I look forward to sharing with members in the coming months those plans and to having those scrutinised by both Cabinet and the Select Committee, so make sure that they're as effective and impactful as they can be in the future. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And before I bring colleagues in, can I just also pass on my thanks to you, Will, and all of the school community for the work they've done. You know, when Estin come to visit, it's a challenging time for all of us, but it's something which is welcome because it lays down the challenges to you all and to us all of where the effort needs to be focused going forward. And to have if we had an Estin report which didn't have any areas of improvement, that would be very strange, because I don't think anybody can ever get perfect. You've got to continually be striving for better things, and we've got some work to do. But I recognise the positives through the report. I don't need to rehearse those positives. Richard done that, but he also identified, and I share his focus on those recommended areas, because that's where we really want to add value. This is about adding value. You know, the needs of the learner override all things, and we just got to keep our focus hard on improving those. But it's a positive report, as Estin reports go, a very positive report, and I was very pleased with the personal feedback that the team gave us all when we met with them, and especially around safeguarding as well, and you look forward to them doing a case study on that when we think of where we come through safeguarding over the last few years, indeed where we've come from with regard to the wider Estin situation over the last few years. You know, things have improved immensely, and I thank everybody involved for that. I'm going to bring Councillor Bob Greenland in now.
Thank you, Leader. And I don't want to go through and reiterate all you've just said, but I would like to particularly thank Will and his team, but also to Richard John as our Cabinet Member for Education. He has done a fantastic job in political leadership in education, and we all are indebted to him for his leadership. I've read through more of these Estin reports than I care to think about, and those of ours in the past and those of other councils as well. And I think anybody reading this will recognise this as a good report. And in fact, if you compare it with some other fairly recent reports from around Wales, it is a very good report. But as both Richard and Will have said, there are improvements, and there will always be improvements that we can make. And it's quite clear that politically and from an officer point of view, we recognise where those improvements are to be made. And in particular, the report itself of Estin, when it refers to free school meals, says local authority officers have a clear commitment to address this as a priority and to bring about improvements in the well-being and academic achievements of pupils eligible for free school meals. So we know what is wrong, and we politically, and I'm sure Richard, will be ensuring that as we move forward, we do actually see those improvements in the areas where we need to improve coming forward. That's the job of the political leadership, to not only set the policies, but to also ensure that where we need improvements, they will be forthcoming. And I look forward to the further work that I'm undoubtedly sure is being done even as we meet today, and to make sure that those improvements come into the future.
Thanks, Bob. And can I echo? I didn't remiss of me, Rich. I didn't mention you and taking you for granted there. But absolute, Bob. Richard's done a brilliant job in leading this, and Richard and Will together are a formidable team at the helm of education in Monmouthshire, and I'm pleased we've got them both. Right, colleagues, but if you are planning to speak, just jot it in the chat bar. I've seen nothing at the moment. So I will invite Councillor Petruni, who has a couple of questions. Dimitri.
Hi, Peter. Thank you. A couple of questions. The confidence spoken by Councillor John and Will McLean about knowing where to go, knowing what they have to tackle, is shocking, given that the data we're giving ourselves has been sort of challenged by Estin. We've got poor diagnostics on improvement, got poor diagnosis and analysis of where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are. I mean, I'm quoting the report here. And I'm just wondering, particularly around SEN actually, and considering success measures for the attainment of pupil eligible free school meals. So why is our internal, I presume this is internal, by the way, our internal diagnostics, I'm assuming quantitative data, so poor?
Would you like to ask your second question as now as well, please, Dimitri? We'll answer the two then afterwards.
Sure. The second question is relation to school deficit positions. Estimate pay particular attention to that. And I'm concerned by the last comment, which just says the council is yet to identify the wider implications for schools of holding such low levels of reserves and the impact of introducing loans. I'm just wondering, what is our assessment of that? What do we have an understanding of the wide implications? I know teaching assistants are down. I know we're one of the record lows of teachers. I've gone through the stats. So what's our plan?
Okay, thanks for those, Dimitri. Right, I'll invite Richard in, and where he feels fit for him to invite Will in.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Petruni, for those questions. But let me say this first of all. We're going to be spending a lot of time in the coming weeks and months, quite rightly, discussing the contents of this report. It's absolutely right and important that, as an authority, this report is scrutinised, because we want to move forward in the most effective way to be able to deliver those improvements as set out in the report. But we all have a responsibility to be careful and accurate about our language. So in the way that, as an administration, we won't be sexing up this report and only talking about the positives. And equally, we don't expect opposition members or others to talk it down. So you tweeted the other day saying there were contents of the report that you referred to worrying, concerning. You've just said there are points in the report that are shocking, that are poor. None of those words are in the report. So let's just remember, we all have a responsibility to be accurate. This report has been put together by people with considerable authority and expertise in education in Wales. It's painstakingly detailed, and we should respect its contents. Now, about the point you've made about data, what the report says is that overall our improvement planning processes impact positively, that our priorities provide a sound basis to manage and direct resources, that they're reviewed regularly, that processes are mostly reflective and promote a valuable culture of accountability. And it says, although improvement planning generally takes account of an appropriate range of information and data, it does not always focus sharply enough on the specific aspects of support required or what success might look like. So that's what the report says. Our self-evaluation processes driven by data are clear and consistent. However, there is a range of practice, and I'm working with the Chief Officer and his team to improve this, which will enable greater confidence that decisions we make are as robust as they can be. Estin engaged in a valuable professional dialogue with officers and others, and alongside recent changes to the ALN management structure, I am confident that we'll see a more holistic and robust use of data in this area in the future. The Chief Officer's report will be presented at the next full council meeting next month, and we will have an opportunity then, in fact all members will have an opportunity then, to discuss the approaches that are being developed in that document.
Did you want to address the finance issue?
Yeah, on your second question, so about school deficits, I mean, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. A number of our schools have been in a deficit position for a number of months. The use and management of school budgets are devolved governing bodies, and despite challenging settlements that we've received, we've always sought to protect schools. And indeed, this year we reversed a much discussed £800,000 reduction to the individual schools' budget. But we are in a position of great uncertainty, and we will continue to do what we can to protect school budgets. But we anticipate the school's year-end position to reflect an improvement in the deficit position we saw in month 10, and we continue to work positively with all our schools, particularly our secondary schools, to discuss that loan agreement, which will enable certain schools to be able to make those investments. We don't want any schools to be deterred from making investments in, particularly in key areas like numeracy and literacy, just because they have a deficit position. So a loan will give those schools greater flexibility. For schools that do have a deficit, Councillor Murphy and I have been having regular meetings to discuss those school improvement plans. But we are not alone. Despite being the worst funded local authority in the country, there are individual schools in neighbouring authorities with significantly greater budget deficits, multi-million-pound budget deficits in some instances. So there are challenges Wales-wide in terms of school funding, but we will always be perhaps at greater risk of having school deficits because we are the worst funded local authority. But we've been very clear that education is our #1 priority, offering children the very best start in life, and the tough decisions we've taken in successive budget rounds evidence those clear priorities.
Thank you, Richard. That's a really comprehensive answer. Will, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just very briefly, Leader, if I may. I think the question mark about the data is a very specific point, and I think it's really the kind of the broader piece that Councillor Johns referred to that I draw on. One of the things that I took assurance from in terms of my role as Chief Officer, and that part where the report cites the authority has established clear and consistent self-evaluation processes that allow leaders and managers to identify an overview of strengths and areas for improvement in most areas. Where self-evaluation processes are used effectively, they quality assure services well and inform improvement planning, such as safeguarding. So we know that there are places, we know that throughout the organisation, we know how to identify those areas that we need to work in more detail on. And I think that's the key part for me, is that there is really excellent practice in CYP that understands the impact of the interventions we put in place. It's about making sure that that is consistent now across the whole piece, rather than being, at the moment, we have 1 or 2 pockets where we need to strengthen that. And I think that's the message from Estin, and certainly in listening to the feedback that was offered throughout the week from those colleagues who undertook the inspection, that was very much the message that they were looking to impart to us. We know that there will be some specific areas where that additional depth is required, and we're committed to working in that. And I think some of the changes that Richard just alluded to will strengthen that and allow us to do it. And you'll see more detail of that in the Chief Officer's report when that comes to Council in early June. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot, Will. Thanks again, Richard. Okay, I'm going to move us through to the recommendations in the report at 2.1, and I'll read those out, and then we'll go to the chat line to make the vote. So the recommendations are that it's recommended that Cabinet, little 1, receive the report published on the 21st of April this year, and to note the areas of strength and recommendations contained within the report, and to agree the proposed timelines and approaches to address the report's recommendations. Okay, you see the vote in the chat line. Can you vote accordingly there, please? Okay, right. Thank you very much, everybody. That the voting system works, and they're unanimous in favour of those recommendations. Once again, we'll take our thanks back to the team, wide-ranging team, and to the EAS for all the good work they've done. I'm going to move us on now then to the next report, and this is the COVID-19 decision-making report, which Paul Jordan will be presenting. We're also joined by Matt Phillips, Head of Legal and Monitoring, who may contribute as well. So over to you, Councillor Paul Jordan.
Right, thank you, Leader. I hope you can all see me here. This report is submitted to update Cabinet on the impact of decision-making that the COVID-19 period has had within the Council and identify next steps. The World Health Organization declared CV-19 as an international public health emergency on the 30th of January. Non-essential travel was advised against on the 16th of March, and the lockdown was introduced on the 23rd of March. Cabinet was last held on the 4th of March, and full council was last held on the 5th of March, and all reports required to be dealt with within the financial year were concluded at that meeting. The Audit Committee on the 19th of March was the last meeting to be held before all subsequent meetings were cancelled owing to the lockdown and the existing legislation that made remote meetings impossible at that time. Individual Cabinet members' decisions were continued as required during the lockdown period, and as per the Constitution, it is within the Leader's gift to determine what executive function he wishes to be dealt with at the Cabinet or via ICMD within the guidance as set out in Article 7, Part C of the Executive Procedure Rules within the Constitution. The Constitution provides authority in certain circumstances for decisions that would normally require Council or Executive approval to be made by the Chief Executive, Chief Officers or Statutory Officers. No such decisions have been made during the CV-19 period. A variety of decisions have been taken either as part of the wider coordinated CV-19 emergency response or as mandated by law that have been enacted as part of the response. All of these decisions have been made within the normal delegated powers of the Chief Officers and, where possible, taken after consultation with the relevant Cabinet members. These decisions include the tasking or redeployment of staff, operational decisions around waste collection and social distances for workers, the exercise of discretion around council tax or business rates relief, and of course, school-focused decisions regarding the opening of hubs and support of key workers. The Local Authorities Coronavirus Meetings Wales Regulations 2020 have changed the pre-existing laws to enable fully remote meetings to take place as long as those participating can hear and be heard. It's possible for the promulgation of all associated documents via electronic means only. It is this change in the law on the 22nd of April that has allowed the Investment Committee on the 24th of April to take place, and now this Cabinet meeting on the 6th of May. Monmouthshire County Council will continue to develop its ability to host meetings remotely with a view to holding a full council meeting. Full legislative work may be required to permit the decision-making bodies of the Planning Committee and Licensing and Regulatory Committees to function again. And as business finds an equilibrium in the CV-19 period, allowing routine work and decision-making to return, the scrutiny functions of the select committees will return accordingly. The AGM may take place at any time in 2020, and all members holding positions as chairs, vice chairs, appointed to bodies, joint committees and other such positions may continue to hold them until the 30th of April 2021. Matt Phillips might want to come in in a moment just to update us on the position with regard to the quasi-judicial functions of some of these committees. And that's my report, Leader.
Okay, thanks very much. Can I just on behalf of all members thank officers for the way they rose to the challenge and implemented the key things which we needed to implement in line with the law, and put those things in place in such a professional and well managed way. And things like standing up the childcare hubs and schools was fantastic effort, and I just thank you for the speedy way you all did your relative bits in making us prepare for this unprecedented challenge. So just a big thank you there. Matt Phillips, would you like to come in, or are you okay?
Thanks, Leader, and thanks, Councillor Jordan. Yeah, there's probably a couple of additional pieces of detail just worth updating on. Obviously, you made mention already with regards to the date now set for full council and the intention to hold the AGM. I'm just conscious that paragraph 3.8, which you've been asked to approve the intention of, makes reference to further legislative work. Since the agenda came out, myself and a couple of monitoring officers across Wales have met with Welsh Government, and there's also been additional guidance around planning that's been released by Welsh Government. So combined, that we've all jointly concluded now that there's no requirement for any further legal works. There's no legal obstacle to holding those meetings, so that's good news. I'm conscious too that there's reference to the fact that decision making has continued in the guise of individual cabinet member decisions. Having reviewed those, and it's entirely right that all were dealt with by individual cabinet member decisions, because that power sits within the constitution for you, Leader, to make that decision. Having reviewed it, I think there's probably actually only one of those decisions we would have seen come to cabinet in the normal course of legislation, not prevented. And that's on the guaranteed interview scheme for care leavers. So I just raised that one because it was an item that fell out of a council meeting we had where we heard from care leavers. I think that's probably the only one I'd identify as a normal cabinet business. But as I said, entirely right that it was dealt with by the individual cabinet member, just as a way of progressing with that piece of work. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Matt. And so it's good news that we can move forward with those quasi-judicial functions. And whilst planning has never stopped, there's elements of it which need to be picked up by the planning committee. So as soon as we can get that moving, that'll be great. So thank you for that. I've seen no. Well, can I invite colleague cabinet members? Is there anything anybody wants to add at this point? I'm not indicating anything in the chat line. I know, Councillor Bertruni, you do have a question on this report as well. Would you like to present that?
Yeah, thank you. Given the seriousness of the issue and COVID-19, I'm quite, well, the Labour group are upset that the scrutiny process seems to be one of the kind of lowest considerations of the decision-making process. We understand that quick decisions had to be made in certainly the first month, but other national parliaments, both the UK and Welsh Parliament, seem to be up and running pretty quickly, including their scrutiny functions. Why is scrutiny not seen as a kind of a necessary mechanism for holding you guys to account?
Thanks, Dimitri. Paul, have you got an answer for that?
I have, yes, indeed. Thank you, Dimitri, for that question. Right, scrutiny of select committees are an important part of the executive-led council in holding executive decisions to account. Council has not sat since the 4th of March owing to the lockdown, nor have any other committees been able to sit either. There have been no cabinet-level decisions taken during that period that would require scrutiny. Now that the legislation is in place to allow us to return to the normal democratic functions, we can start to return to holding these meetings. We remain in an emergency and resource is prioritised accordingly. It is also necessary to develop our capability to hold meetings remotely within the constraints that the technology places upon us. We're learning and improving as we go. Hopefully, it's a measure of our intent that we are the first local authority in Wales to hold meetings under this new legislation. As we seek to return to normal council functions, priority will be given to the decision-making bodies in order to return that council business can resume as soon as possible. We hope that the full council meeting on the 4th of June will take place. The returning licensing and planning functions will continue thereafter. We're intent on hosting all member seminars on a number of topics, which will provide natural forums for scrutiny as desired, while allowing us to familiarise councillors with the nature of remote meetings and learn from the experience in order to facilitate future meetings. This is not about highest or lowest considerations. This is a considered attempt to return to our normal council functions in the midst of an ongoing emergency and within the knowledge, experience and resource limitations placed upon us. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And there has been some constraints. We've had, as all authorities would have had a lot of staff who have had to work from home, or they've been isolating at home, or they're in a vulnerable group, or or they've had to be redeployed. The whole nature of how we operate the organisation has had to change. And it's only now we're starting to be able to take the steps to bring some normality back to the function of the council. And I'm hoping due course in the very near future that those select committees can be up and running. I know that there are already scrutiny chairs who are bringing together forums as well, so that they can hone their skills in using technology ready for a deeper engagement within the select function. So yes, I don't think anybody's trying to miss out scrutiny. Scrutiny is absolutely fundamental part of the decision making and policy development of this council, and it always will be. So colleagues, nobody else has got in the chat line to speak, so I'll take us to the recommendation. There's one there in 2.1, and it's to note 3.4 and approve the intention set out in 3.8, as Paul Jordan took us through earlier. If you can vote now, please.
Good.
Okay, we've got 100% unanimous. 8. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you, Matt. So I'll take us on into the next report, and this is the strategic aims, and it will provide an overview of the strategic aims that will be in place for the duration of the pandemic. I think, as I touched on earlier in a statement, the need to preserve life and stop the spread of virus while continuing to support communities has meant that we have had to pause or repurpose our usual work, and our focus on the corporate plan has had to be changed and lessened, so that we can redirect our capacity toward the emergency response effort. And to that end, then, you'll note that in 3.2 we've drafted and pulled together some very important strategic aims for us to organise our work by over the next few months as we work through these challenging times. Just to touch on those then, they are important. They're important messages that the public understand of where our focus is as an organisation. And, to provide clear, purposeful civic leadership is important. And I hope people will agree that we are and certainly trying to do that. And I think we are doing that. And to continue to provide childcare for children of key workers is absolutely fundamental to this effort, and ensure continuation of learning for all young people. To help vulnerable young people and adults who need our support. Absolutely key. We're doing that in spades now, and we have to maintain that, as we have to maintain our support for businesses to help them survive and strive. And you'll know all of the work that I highlighted earlier, which has gone on to make sure that our businesses don't fall over through these extraordinary times. And we thank the government for putting together the packages which we can distribute on their behalf, and the messages of support from businesses have been lovely. They've really recognised that that the staff have pulled the stops out here in Monmouthshire to make things happen. It's also important that we keep our neighbourhoods clean and tidy whilst managing the waste as sustainably as we can, and I don't think anybody could disagree. We've maintained an excellent service, hardly any changes apart from the closure of the recycling centres and bulky waste collections and green waste. Those other main streams have been picked up just as they would have done before, and a big thank you to all of the staff who've done that. And it's important that we maintain and be a trusted partner to other agencies and organisations. It's only through a shared effort, a collective response in the public, through public bodies, that we can do this together. And there's great work going on through the various forums to make sure that happens. And we just needed to state that our commitment to that, and a statement, an aim to keep a safe, healthy and productive workforce. We do need our staff to look after themselves. And many, I think, through this crisis have worked above and beyond, many more hours than they should be doing, because that's just what they do here. And, but at times, we have to help them take a break and slack back a bit. So it's important we keep that healthy, productive workforce. And to ensure we remain financially sustainable as an organisation. As you go down to the latter stages of this report, you'll see the financial implications of all of this, and they are significant. They're significant across all councils in Wales, and part of my role most weeks is talking with other leaders and ministers to put the case across on the financial side of things. In 3.3 of the report, you will note that these aims are going to be kept under continuous review and are used to direct the work of our emergency response teams who meet throughout the week and ensure our approach is based on the latest evidence. You'll see there in 3.3 also those bullet pointed examples of actions which will be happening to support the aims. I won't read all through those. The virus presents a challenge to the short-term cash flow, definitely, and long-term viability of many businesses. That's a fact. And we're not immune from that also. It's likely that we will need to revisit some of the aspirations that we had in the corporate plan as we face up to the new financial reality. And that's a message I know has been repeated by the Chancellor, by the Minister in Wales Government for Finance, that this changes all of us, and we have to raise to that challenge. But despite those challenges, the past few months have resulted in many new ways of doing things, and this is a prime example of that. So, out of adversity comes opportunity, and I think we're going to hopefully build, a better way of doing things as a result of all of this. There is an established performance framework which will continue to facilitate service planning, performance management and risk management across all services. And the actions that are continuing to deliver the corporate plan will be embedded into the service or business plans of the individual teams and tracked as they would be normally, and can be monitored on the hub. And we will be given a report on progress against the corporate plan in October. Obviously, that'll be an interesting read. We see how things roll out as we move through this situation we're in now. There's a raft of things we talked in the resource implications there, but it's worth just noting the cost to the authority to date. We believe it's somewhere around the region of £3.4 million. This is going to cost this council just for this first quarter. through either cost pressures or through lost income. And across Wales, that's working out around £170 million a quarter. So, massive impact. But one of those strategic aims, as I pointed out, is to make sure this council remains financially sustainable as an organisation, and we'll do whatever we have to do to make sure that stays the case. So, members, there are the aims that we have there. They are, for the time being, and they help to guide us through these difficult times. And so, colleagues, can I hand over to you? Can I invite Councillor Green then, please?
Yes, thanks, Leader. I just want to make reference to the the aim to help businesses survive. And here I want to thank the officers of the council who have been administering the business support grants, which were delivered by both Westminster and then passported through to Welsh Government. We were the first council in Wales to begin to get those grants out. And we have, as you said, received a lot of thanks for the work that we've been doing there. To get those grants out, we had to redeploy staff from other areas, and they have all worked extremely well in administering these grants out to our businesses. But we still have some businesses who are falling between the cracks. And we are talking quite a number of businesses, maybe 200 to 300 in Monmouthshire. And of particular concern will be the very smallest of these businesses, who so far, under the rules of both Westminster and Welsh Government, are receiving no help whatsoever. And I know you, through your meetings with ministers, have already made reference to these in general, Leader. I think that we will, I think businesses need to know that we will continue to press the cases for all businesses who are not receiving help. I'm particularly concerned about the future of our town centres and small individual businesses that that are there. Every business pays rates. Service industries like plumbers going out for it don't pay rates, and some of those are falling between the cracks. So we've got a continuing job to do, both in terms of officers and I know the officers are taking this forward through their links with Welsh Government, and we politically also need to keep continually talking to Welsh Government, where we have the best links, obviously, and trying to ensure that these other people who are high and dry and likely to go out of business if this continues for much longer, we do try and get help to them.
Thank you, Bob. Can I invite Sarah Jones in, please?
Thanks, Leader. It was just 2 points I wanted to make around the report, which I very much welcome in terms of those strategic aims that we've set. The first is around the community support that we're going to be required. Whilst this is a council document, quite clearly we need the support of our communities to make it a success in terms of those aspirations. And on that point, I want to applaud the efforts of our community and our community partnership team and communications team for engaging people in that effort. I think we're very fortunate to have some very strong, resilient communities already in place that are doing fantastic work. And some of those statistics that are coming out from that volunteering effort, which we're using now to measure some of those outputs, are incredible. So it's a really positive news story, but it needs that continued support and effort to help us on that. And the second point I wanted to make, I'm really obviously keen to see the support for vulnerable young people and adults, because quite clearly this crisis is going to hit parts of our communities that we would never have had contact with before. It's going much further than just those that we recognise as having challenges financially and otherwise. And there's a lot of work happening here. I just wanted to alert Cabinet to this. So we're doing a lot of ward level mapping at the moment in terms of the impact of coronavirus on people's incomes and their ability to sustain things in the community. And that piece of work will come forward as part of a seminar that we're going to do for all members to keep them updated on that activity. And finally, just to say that sort of data that's coming forward is going to be really helpful for us in terms of that proactive approach that we're taking. So we're already reaching out to vulnerable residents. We're contacting shielded residents to check in with them. But some of this data is going to help inform that as well. So it's just to make you aware of some of that work that's happening and to thank the teams that are involved in that approach.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for sharing that, and absolutely echo all of what's going on. I think the volunteer effort has been just stunning. I mean, like I said, out of adversity comes some real positivity, doesn't it? And I think the society, the communities have just pulled together in a way that we often don't see in these modern times. And it's refreshing that, those inherent humane things we have within us are still there and strong. So yeah, thanks for that. Nobody else on the chat lines. I know, Dimitri, you have a question again.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Lovely strategic aims. No one's going to disagree with it. And here again, we're hearing some sporadic actions of what's happening. But what measures and targets are we going to actually hold you to account for? There's nothing in there to hold you to account. What's the baseline? What's the benchmarks? Nothing. And I just wonder, no one's going to disagree with the strategic aims, no one in their right mind. But then how can we hold you to account for any aims that are not hit, any targets that are not hit? What is it? Just warm words?
Yeah. No, well, I'll bring in a moment Matt Gatehouse, Head of Policy and Governance, in to share our thoughts of how we'll do that. But some of the things I'll be gauging will be how many businesses are still stood up, how many people are being looked after, how many services are continue to be provided. It's not about sitting down, finding challenges for challenges' sake. We'll be doing all we can to deliver against these aims. But I agree, you need something to be able to hold us account to. So Matt Gatehouse, Head of Policy and Governance, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Leader. So just to pick up, obviously, what you see as Cabinet before you today are those strategic aims which you have shaped with chief officers and your direction. One of the things you've also seen as sort of Cabinet and individual members is some of the detail that sits under that. Of course, that is operational detail. Much like the way the organisation runs on a day-to-day basis, as Cabinet, you set strategic direction and task officers with putting the detail underneath that. So underneath these strategic aims sit a whole range of action and some accompanying milestones. Now, one of the things we have to be conscious of with this is that this is a dynamic and fast-moving environment. We get new data overnight on shielded individuals. We get new information in every day on businesses. So one of the things we have to be cautious of is putting out and publishing targets which are against an ever-moving cohort of people. So yes, we have information. As Councillor Jones has just alluded to, there's a huge amount of analysis going on behind the scenes, and officers use that every day to inform their activities. However, a lot of that is not necessarily right for target setting, but it doesn't mean it isn't there. It doesn't mean we don't have the data and we're not using the data. That detail, as I mentioned, sits underneath these, and similar to the way in which Cabinet members use service business plans to hold staff to account. These aims underneath this are being uploaded to the hub where they're visible to all members and officers of the authority, so you can track some of the detail on those individual actions. But they are sort of operational detail, and as and when this work is evaluated and brought forward in different forms, and some of that detail can be surfaced to inform the learning and made available to members as part of your decision making and scrutiny forums.
Thank you, Matt, and I hope that well, I know it doesn't satisfy Dimitri because I see he's put some things in the chat line, but there is the dashboard which people can always go on and look at how we are managing alongside our current business plans and things. There is a wealth of information available to members if they only go and look for it. So thanks for the question, Dimitri. Again, thanks for the answer, Matt. If there's no other people coming in, I'll go to the vote on this one then. and the recommendations in here at 1.1 and 1.2 are that the Cabinet recognise that there is a trade-off between the need to preserve life and stop the spread of the virus and the achievement of the goals set within the corporate plan. And 1.2, that Cabinet approve the strategic aims shown in paragraph 3.2. So you have that voting option up on your chat line. Can you please, is that one come yet? Yes, it is. Right, okay. Okay, thank you all, and that's carried unanimously. Thanks for that. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Richard. If Richard's looking in for the work he would have also or will be doing in regard to this in the future. Can I then move us on to the last report of the day, and that's the risk management report, and that's Councillor Paul Jordan once again.
Thank you, Leader. This report sets out the arrangements that the Council has in place to identify, manage and mitigate risks in response to the coronavirus. The coronavirus pandemic has posed a significant and unprecedented challenge to how the Council continues to provide a range of vital services. The Emergency Management Plan and business continuity arrangements have been enacted, and the Council is working with our external partners to deliver and coordinate the response. A diagram on the internal response structure that link the wider formal Gwent structures are set out on in Annex 1 of the report. There is an amendment, in fact, to Annex 1 in that adjacent to the strategic leadership box, it should refer to Cabinet and not elected members. But to continue, the emergency response team is represented by all directorates and specific subgroups. The RT monitor progress on agreed actions, identifies specific risks related to the COVID response and monitors these risks and coordinates the overall response to the emergency. The group meets regularly and can be convened if the situation arises. The current high and medium risks are set out in detail within Annex 2 of the COVID risk register. As with all risk registers, there are live documents, and this will be accurate at the point the Cabinet agenda was circulated. The current chair of the emergency response team, the Chief Officer for Enterprise, has confirmed today that they're considering and reviewing the need to capture additional risks, which the document within the document as the situation with the pandemic changes. The high and medium risk levels are summarised in paragraph 3.7 of the report and captures a wide range of matters, many of which have been widely reported in the press and can be recognised as risks that affect the nation. It is no surprise that risks regarding staff absence, PPE, finance, public unrest and increased demand upon funeral and burial services are identified. This has been an incredible amount of work by the Gwent Strategic Coordinating Group and the Council's Emergency Response Team, and a phenomenal amount of work has been and continues to be achieved. The Council continues to operate in a dynamic environment. The arrangements are continually under review to evolve and adapt to changing circumstances, latest evidence and emerging guidance. It is therefore recommended that the Cabinet endorse the arrangements that are in place and that the risks that are being managed in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Obviously, a situation like we're in does present new challenging risks, and then they will be fluid, won't they? Things will happen. I know PPE, for instance, was a really
hot topic
risk, and has been and still we never take our eye off it. But I know through meetings this morning with other Welsh leaders that on the whole that eased up a little, but we must keep watching it. So like I said, that they're very fluid, some of these risks, but very, very real. I just wondering, yeah, Francis. I just wondered if Francis wanted to come in and add anything to this report.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Francis, I didn't introduce you. You're Francis O'Brien, Chief Officer for Enterprise.
Thank you. Just want to say thank you really to the members of the emergency response team. I'm the current chair of the emergency response team, but both myself, Will and Julie Boothroyd have all been chairs of the emergency response team over this period of time. And it's just an opportunity really to say thank you, not only to all of the people that are identified in that structure, but there's a substantial amount of effort, as you've already identified this afternoon, where officers have come together into reshaped and reformed teams to deliver our response to the emergency. We will continue to monitor and review the emergency response team. Obviously, when you pull together an emergency response team, it's dependent upon the nature of that emergency and what's required, and then that will be shaped and formed as time goes on. As you've set out, the risks are currently being reviewed and they'll continuously be monitored. This is an organic document and it will be reviewed in a structured way, and we will add additional risks to that risk register as time progresses. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Yeah,
thank you, Francis. And just take back our thanks again to the resilience forums and the strategic coordinating group. Those of you who sit on them, you know, had to respond so quickly to so many varying things, and still are. And this is a 24/7 job for you guys, and I know that you meet on Sundays as well doing this thing. So a big thanks for the way people have responded to whatever's been thrown in front of them. Penny Jones would like to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. I just wondered if the vulnerable children could be looked at within the risks. It could be added somewhere along the line, alongside the adults, because you know there are those at risk that we're not aware of, perhaps. Will come out later. So or perhaps the vulnerability of families. I don't know how you would place it, but just something other than adults, perhaps a wider perception.
Okay, Francis, want to respond?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Yes, that's something that Julie is considering and looking at the moment with regards to updating the risk register to ensure that we consider that as a risk within it, and we will look at that in terms of any mitigation that we need to put in place as well. I don't know whether Julie Boothroyd would like to come in, Leader, as well.
Well, I was going to say, if Julie would like to come in and just give us some assurances around vulnerable children and what we're doing around that side of things, would be great. Possibly even Will might want to add to that as well. Julie, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, everybody. As Francis and others have alluded to, this is a rapidly dynamic and changing, agenda. We are actively looking at our children who are supported both from a local authority perspective, so any children on the Child Protection Register, any of our looked after children, and have many different ways of doing a workaround. And actually, I think I've said this in our informal meetings, that some of the approaches, or some of the impact of lockdown has had a very positive effect on some families. And I think it's been quite a surprise to some of our frontline workers as to how, in a sense, the pressure of not having to go to school and the pressure of, not the pressure, I suppose, there is the pressure of being locked down, but also it's had a positive effect on some families. And I think there's been some very interesting learning that we're looking at. That to one side, the issues around wider safeguarding, around domestic abuse, around what we're not seeing, is a hot topic for us, and it keeps us all awake at night. But there's lots of work going on to look at how can we up our game around awareness raising. The safeguarding procedures are continuing to be enacted as we speak. We have developed a range of online training, which I think is going to be very, very useful. It's already in action, as it were. But I I think it's just one of those areas that, if you like, day by day, week by week, we are consciously looking at and evaluating. It isn't something that we forget about and then come back to. It is actively being pursued. But like I say, it's a balance of things we don't know about that we want to make sure we can get a better view of. Interestingly, this morning we were talking about really upping our game with our volunteers. If you think about the numbers of volunteers that we've referenced earlier that are out and about in our communities, how can we ensure that they have that little bit of a third eye into the safeguarding and protection arena, so that actually we can have a little bit more eyes on in some of the areas? So, like I say, it's an area that we are constantly evaluating and looking at, but I'm hoping that that gives members a little bit more assurance. And obviously through the ERT meeting, we will continue to monitor that.
Thanks so much, Julie, for that, and thanks go back to the teams for what you've all been doing. You know, I know our staff have got their eye on the situation and have found innovative ways to make sure they keep contact with people and families. So thanks for all that's gone on there. Penny wants to come back. Sorry, Penny, would you like to come in?
Well, you've done it for me, Peter, really. I was just going to say, also with reference to the Estin report, perhaps we should be congratulating the safeguarding team as a whole, the whole authority team and all the chief officers who've encompassed safeguarding and absorbed it into their portfolios, because it's such an important part and it's playing such an important part during this crisis. But thank you especially to Julie, who leads it. But as I say, you had done that, but I just wanted to emphasise. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Well said. Okay, I've got no other anybody asking to come in from Cabinet. So, Dimitri, I know you have a question.
It's a running theme, Peter. Scrutiny and keeping you guys and the officers to account for the decisions you make. It's important, both for mistakes made at Welsh Government and at UK Government. It's important that scrutiny function happens. I've read the report. I know there's a risk register, but can you just be clear, who is holding the ERT to account? Is it the Cabinet? Is it the leader? Is it elected members? Is it all of them for decisions made and mistakes made, as well as the good things? Because I know you guys are inclined to always talk about the good things, but unless you're superhuman, there will be mistakes in how we can learn from that. So what is the precise scrutiny function of the ERT?
Yeah, you ought to try thinking about good things for a change, Dimitri. It's quite enjoyable being positive. Yeah. So can I invite Paul Jordan in to answer that, please?
Okay, thank you, Leader. Right, the emergency response team is by its very nature established to coordinate a response to an emergency. The very fact that we have an ERT means that the circumstances are extraordinary. The tools and processes that it utilises follow documents agreed by members, including, for example, the Register of Priority Services and the Emergency Management Plan. The RT maintain both a decision log and an action plan to facilitate the process. I believe that the leader is expecting the chairs of the ERD, there have been 3, to provide an input at the next full council meeting, both by ways of updates to all members, but also to enable full council to enact its scrutiny role as it sees fit. Thanks, Leader.
No, thanks, Paul. No, looking forward to that first council. There's going to be a lot of business, a lot of things we'll all need to discuss, and the ultimate scrutiny committee is the full council, and that's where we can talk to many of these things. So I have seen nobody else in the chat line wanting to come in, so I'm going to bring us to the last recommendation of the day, and that's in at 2.1, and that the Cabinet endorse the arrangements the Council has in place and the risks that are being managed in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Please, can you vote now? There we go. Okay, thank you, everybody. That's unanimous. So that brings us to the end of this first Cabinet meeting. We will hone it over the next few months as we get used to the technology. Thank you for bearing with us. And thank you everybody for your contributions. And can I once again offer the Cabinet's thanks to all officers right through the organisation, wherever they sit, or staff, wherever they work. Just a massive thank you for all you're doing and you're going to continue to do on the community and the county's behalf. So with that, can I thank you all once again, and I now close the meeting. Thank you.